In the 5th era, in the year 1349, on September 9th, the end of the world began in the city of Tingen, where there was a woman screaming, and it seemed like a destructive monster had emerged from her. There was a person trying to fight this monster to destroy it, but unfortunately the monster was able to kill this person and knock him to the ground. Then the monster exploded and the end of the world happened. But suddenly another person appeared flying in the air and strange things happened to him, and it seemed that the person who was fighting the monster was reincarnated again in another person's body, and returned to the past to the date 1349, June 28th. This person had a wound on his head that suddenly began to heal, and we learned that this person was called Klein when a ghost called out to him, and Klein understood that he had come back to life again. The scene shifts to a house with 2 murdered people, and investigators came to investigate the matter. The investigators said that these 2 people were Lish and Naya, and they were killed either by suicide or by practicing black magic and being sacrificed. Because of this, an evil power was awakened, and these 2 people had a relationship with Klein. We see Klein getting dressed and reading a diary belonging to the real Klein. It contained information about Klein, who turned out to be an expert in spells and magic, and about Lish, who had brought Klein a notebook from the 4th era. They had decoded some of the codes in this notebook, and Klein began reading about all the strange things that had happened, wondering whether what was written in it was real or not. But what caught his attention was that the notes from June 27th were missing. Then a note appeared in the notebook saying that at some point the world would end and everyone would die, which shocked Klein. But suddenly Klein leaves everything when he hears his sister's voice. She had woken up, and he tries to hide everything so as not to shock her, but the gun remains visible on the desk. Klein realizes this at the last moment, but his sister Melissa notices that something strange is happening and hears the sound of the gun that Klein was trying to hide. When she asks about the source of the sound, Klein tells her it's the clock and it stopped again. His sister looks at him with contempt, goes and fixes the clock, gives it to him, then leaves, making him feel stupid. After that, Klein noticed that the wound on his head had completely healed, and thought that maybe he got the healing ability when he was reincarnated again. He began thinking about whether what happened to Klein was suicide or murder, because Klein's memories weren't clear to him yet, but he was sure that many strange things had happened and would happen because of the notebook he had. Then he began remembering that he was always unlucky and failed most of the time, which is why he had used a luck charm before sleeping. But his sister interrupted his thoughts when she brought him breakfast and told him to rest on the bed if he was confused because she noticed he was tired. She asked him to get fresh bread and not leave his breakfast for long because it would spoil quickly due to the heat. Then she told him she would bring him meat today but would be a little late outside. This meat was a reward because Klein had been looking for work hard during the past period. Klein was moved by his sister's words and said goodbye to her, then she left for her school. Klein was thinking that maybe his sister wouldn't find him when she returned because he decided to stay away from home so as not to put her in danger, but he hoped things would go well. Then he went to get her bread as she requested. The shop owner welcomed Klein and congratulated him on his graduation, saying he was a special person and would find an excellent job soon. Klein noticed that someone was watching him from outside the shop. Then Klein took the bread, thanked the lady profusely, then left and walked through the city streets, observing everything. He was even amazed by what he saw, and felt like he was in a parallel world compared to his previous life. While walking, he was drawn to the sound of people playing cards and was surprised that they had games like the ones he used to play. Then he continued on his way and began thinking about what had happened to him and what kind of place he was in now. Meanwhile, he dropped a coin, and when he tried to pick it up, he felt someone approaching him and immediately prepared his gun, but it turned out to be a clown inviting him to the circus. Klein accepted his invitation and left, but he noticed that there were people following him, so he quickened his steps to avoid them. Then he entered a tent to hide and watch the situation, but it turned out to be a fortune teller's tent, and she invited him to sit with her to know his future. Then we see the first person who was watching Klein heading toward him, but when this person saw the other person, he quickly left and moved away from Klein. During this, the fortune teller insisted that Klein sit to know his future and told him that since he was her first customer, it would be free. Klein indeed sat down and asked the fortune teller if interpreting the cards was also free. The fortune teller got nervous and said it was free, but Klein knew there was nothing free in this world. As he began shuffling the cards, the fortune teller asked him what he wanted to know. He told her he wanted to know about his past, present, and future. The fortune teller began drawing 3 cards and placed them in front of Klein, telling him that the first card was for his past, the second for his present, and the third for his future. She asked him which card he wanted to reveal first, and the card was the Fool, which is the beginning of the card sequence and means a new beginning. At this moment, the real fortune teller came, and it became clear that the fortune teller present was a fraud. The person who was watching Klein tried to enter the place, but Klein noticed him and quickly left. After that, Klein returned home and began preparations to perform the spell, putting everything in its place. Then he went to the middle of the room and began the execution. The papers around him began flying while he recited the chants, but when he finished, he found that nothing had happened and was shocked. but suddenly Klein felt a headache and words being said, "Don't look for trouble." Then strange things began to happen and it seemed the spell had succeeded. A red bubble appeared around Klein, who was screaming from the severe pain. Then he suddenly found himself floating in a strange place with strange red spots and blue spots around him. These spots began swirling around Klein, but suddenly the scene shifted to a strange woman casting spell chants also in the name of the Hall family. We also see a strange person holding a bottle, also casting a spell, and he seemed to feel something that shocked him. Then we see that the girl who was casting the spell moved to the place where Klein was, and the strange man too. It seemed the red dots belonged to the girl and the blue dots belonged to the man. Then the girl asked Klein about the place they were in, and Klein was shocked and didn't understand what was happening. He even thought he was the one who summoned the man and girl using his spell. The girl then asked Klein if he was the owner of this world, and after the girl said these words, Klein thought about them. Then a real world began building around them. Klein then thought that everything they thought and said actually happened, which meant he could use the gray fog, and indeed he was able to use it. Klein thought it seemed he was indeed the master of this world. Meanwhile, the man asked him, "Who are you, sir, and where are we?" Klein began thinking about who he was. Was he really Klein, or was he Chu Mingrui? Then he went and sat on the ruler's chair, and the world began to complete its construction. Then Klein said to the man and girl, "You can call me the Fool." The man said to him, "Mr. Fool, who are you and what will you do now? Because this is considered an assault." The girl then said to him, "Are you done with what you wanted, and can we go home now?" He said to them, "Of course, if you want this and ask me for it now, I will send you home." Meanwhile, Klein was thinking about the personalities of the man and woman because he couldn't see them clearly. He said the girl seemed like a naive teenager, while the man seemed like a mature and cautious person. The girl was happy and said she had always dreamed of having an adventure like this, and asked what she could do to become a Beyonder. Let me tell you about the meaning of Beyonders. Beyonders are people who can obtain various supernatural abilities from 22 different abilities in the Beyonder tree by taking certain potions that we'll discover later and climbing the Beyonder ladder, which consists of a sequence of 9 levels. The lower the sequence number, the stronger the person becomes, meaning sequence 9 is the lowest rank and sequence 1 is the highest rank. Then we return to Klein, who didn't understand the meaning of the word Beyonders and had never heard of it before. So the fool used his intelligence and said to the girl, "The other person can answer this question for you." The other person was surprised how the fool knew he knew the answer and said to the girl, "You're from the city of Lowen, and if you want to become a Beyonder, you must first go and join the Evernight Church or some other churches. Although there are people who can never become Beyonders because they don't have the ability to do so, Beyonders really exist and fight the dangers of darkness." The girl was saying she wanted to become a Beyonder without losing her freedom, but that's what would happen if she joined the church. So he suggested she go and join the royal family or a noble family, but she couldn't do that either. So she asked if there was another way. The man told her that actually there was a way and he had it, because he had 2 potions of Beyonder abilities from the 9th level, one called the Sailor Potion and one called the Spectator. He explained to her the advantages of each. Meanwhile, the fool was thinking whether his ability to summon these people and his use of the gray fog meant he was already a Beyonder. Meanwhile, the girl told the fool that she had made a deal with the man and wanted him to be a witness to it, but she asked his permission to accept other meetings, which shocked the fool because he didn't understand either. Then the man said to him, "Sir, you have power beyond our imagination, and we appreciate your choosing us. So let us handle the trivial matters that you don't have time to deal with." The fool was thinking that if he continued meeting with these people, many of his secrets would be revealed, but dealing with this mysterious world might help him return home. So he said he agreed to the meeting and set a fixed appointment every Monday at 3 p.m. each week. The girl was happy and suggested that she and the man also use fake names because they couldn't use their real names. She suggested that since their master uses a fake name from tarot cards, she decided to also use a name, and her name was Justice, and the man called himself the Hanged Man. Meanwhile, there were people knocking on Klein's room door in the real world, which made him lose his concentration, and the mysterious world began to collapse, but he controlled the situation and regained control of things, then said that now the meeting ends, and each of them returned to their real world. When Klein woke up, he knew that the police were the ones knocking on the door. He hid the gun and went to open the door, and was shocked that the person knocking was a detective rank, and when he opened the door, he was shocked that the detective was the person who had been following him while walking in the city. Klein then said to him, "You were the one following me." So the detective smiled and said, "Let's say I was protecting you." Then the 2 detectives entered Klein's house, and it seems they also have power and are considered beyond normal. But let's discover this while watching. The important thing is that Klein was shocked when he learned the news about Naya and Welch, and that they committed suicide, and he couldn't believe this. The detective told him that at first glance the scene indicated it was suicide, and the detective was asking if Klein had seen any strange things. Meanwhile, the other detective was reading Klein's notebook and read the sentence that everyone will die and asked Klein, who was shocked and didn't know what to say. Then he sat on the bed and said he didn't remember anything. The detective said to him, "Let me tell you this. There's evidence that you visited Mr. McGovern's house on the 27th. Klein said to him, "Maybe you won't believe me, but I don't remember anything except what's in my diary." The detective said to him, "The important thing is that Mr. McGovern lost a gun, and I'm sure we'll find it here." Klein showed them where the gun was, and said he woke up yesterday and found the gun next to him, and he was unconscious, and in a position indicating he was trying to commit suicide, and since these events I've lost many of my memories. The detective said that what Klein was saying fits the conclusions they reached, but even if they were sure Klein was honest, they had to use their methods to be sure, so they would send Klein to a spiritual medium to search his memories and verify the truth of his words. Then the other detective said that in general they were happy that Klein was alive and in good health, because in incidents and crimes like these, all parties are usually dead. Then the detectives left and took Klein with them, who was terrified and afraid they would discover he was transferred from another world. But his thinking was interrupted by a child running away after stealing bread from a bakery, and the bakery owner was chasing him. The detective then caught the boy, but the boy tried to escape and dropped wood on the horse of the detective's carriage, which made things tense around them. Klein then took advantage of the opportunity and began to flee until he reached a distant place and began walking tiredly. Meanwhile, there was water about to fall on him, but suddenly time stopped. Klein understood that there was someone beyond normal in the area and tried to escape and thought he was able to escape when he got in a carriage and asked its driver to move immediately. When he was sure he had moved away from the detectives, he asked the carriage driver to stop, but he didn't stop, and it turned out that the carriage driver was one of the detectives. Suddenly, Klein woke up from his sleep and thought he was dreaming, but the detective appeared before him again and introduced himself as Nighthawk Dunn Smith. Klein was shocked by this person's ability to manipulate his dreams. Dunn told him that at night they are very strong. Klein didn't understand why Dunn was speaking in plural, and suddenly the world around them began to move in a strange way. Then a girl appeared from behind Klein and strangled him and asked him to relax and that she would be gentle with him. Then Klein lost consciousness, and when he woke up he found himself in a strange place. Then he saw his father and mother, but the girl interrupted him. Klein understood that this girl was the spiritual medium and was seeing his memories. Then the medium appeared and grabbed Klein and asked him about the Antigonus family notebook, but he didn't remember. Then she asked him what he was doing on the day Welch and Naya were killed, so he took out his gun and committed suicide. Then he woke up and found that the medium was telling Dunn that Klein was telling the truth. As for the lost memories, they disappeared like Welch and Naya's souls, and she couldn't track them. She also said she had never seen anything like this before and asked Dunn to be careful because the matter was dangerous. Then Dunn said that since the notebook was still missing, this meant Klein was still in danger, and they weren't guards and wouldn't be able to protect him. Then Dunn offered Klein to join them and become one of the Beyond Normal, which shocked Klein. The next day, we see Klein walking down the street, holding a card for a bar in the city. He remembered Dunn telling him, "If you want to join us, go to a man named Wright at the Hounds pub." Klein thought that joining Dunn's Nighthawk squad would be a good cover for him. He headed to the bar, and when he arrived, he found the place chaotic, filled with bets on animals and fights between men who looked nothing like him. To them, he was like a baby. One of these men was about to start a fight with Klein, but Klein avoided it. He then went to speak to Wright, who was angry and asked Klein who sent him. When Klein told him Dunn sent him, Wright said, "Follow me." Wright then put Klein in an elevator and sent him to a strange place called the Blackthorn Security Company. Klein then went to the receptionist, Roseanne, who was asleep. When she woke up, she said she knew he was coming and told him to follow her. We saw the detective there as well. Klein and Roseanne started going down the stairs and met a quiet girl named Royale, then continued on their way. As they walked, Roseanne was showing Klein around the place. They saw a strange person named Fry on their way, who was experimenting on humans, and another person walking alone named Kenley. When they reached the captain's place, Roseanne asked Klein to go alone because she was afraid of the captain, even though he was a nice person. Indeed, Klein went alone and reached a huge door. When he entered, he found Dunn. Dunn then presented him with the enlistment document for his city's 7th unit. Klein was amazed by their headquarters, so Dunn told him this place was just a cover for them, and that there were many other places like it because they were the squad specialized in dealing with supernatural matters. He then welcomed Klein, who was very happy to join, but Dunn warned Klein that he could lose control of himself. For this reason, Dunn asked Klein to take a candle and follow him. Klein was shocked by this. They entered a place with many graves, and Dunn said that these graves belonged to Nighthawks who had lost control of themselves, so they commemorate them. Then Klein and Dunn started talking about the sequences in their order. Dunn said the church had 4 potion paths. The first was the Sleepless Path, then the Corpse Collector Path, the Mystery Prior Path, and the Seer Path. Klein could choose any of them, but he had to think carefully and go to Neil the Alchemist, who would help him make a good decision. Klein thanked the captain and started to leave. As he walked, Klein was thinking about which path to choose and was very hesitant. He then reached the alchemist's room. When he opened the door, he found the place empty, but suddenly there was an explosion, and the alchemist came out. Klein introduced himself, and Neil told him he already knew about him and that Dunn had told him all the details. He then advised him to take his time in choosing a path. Neil asked Klein to help him tidy up the place, and Klein started immediately. Neil was talking to Klein about his life, studies, and experience, but Klein was being humble. Neil told him that he could start by learning easy things and mastering them until he could master difficult things and decipher codes. Then Neil took out a diary belonging to Emperor Roselle, which shocked Klein because most of these diaries had disappeared. Neil opened the diary and said that for 150 years, no one had been able to decipher it, and legend says that whoever deciphers the diary will gain supernatural power. Neil said he managed to decipher some of it and showed it to Klein, but Klein was shocked because he found that the diary was written in Chinese, which was Klein's mother tongue in his past life. This made it easy for him to read the diary, and he began to think about the Emperor's life and its details, reading all the secrets he had written and reacting to them in his mind. In the end, he benefited greatly from this information, but Neil didn't understand why Klein was so lost in thought. When Klein tried to say that he could decipher some of the diary's codes, Neil burst out laughing and said that Klein had the energy of youth and thought he could do anything, but the matter was more difficult than he imagined. Of course, Klein didn't tell Neil that he understood what was written so as not to be discovered and reveal that he came from another world. Klein then decided to take the seer path, like his ancestors whom he learned about from the Emperor's diary. Neil was shocked by this choice and told Klein that if he took the potion and followed this path, there was no turning back. Klein said he was confident in his decision. Neil told him, "Since you've decided which path you'll take, let's start the ritual immediately." He took out the tools and began to make the potion. Its ingredients were truly strange. Even when it was finished, it let out a weird burst, and Neil was shocked by its appearance and smell, doubting it was drinkable. Neil started teasing Klein, which made Klein a little embarrassed. But after that, Neil advised Klein to drink the potion without hesitation, so it wouldn't be bad for him. At that moment, Klein looked at the potion, made his decision, and drank it quickly. The effect began to flow through his veins, and Klein felt strange things. Then Neil told him that the potion's power was starting to show, and he had to imagine something that exists in this world. Klein succeeded. Then Neil asked him to imagine something that doesn't exist in this world. When Klein tried to do this, strange things started to happen, like an explosion and a change in the weather. Neil was telling Klein to hold on and control himself, while Klein was imagining a rocket from his old life, which was the cause of what was happening. Neil was trying to help Klein as much as possible, and indeed, Klein managed to imagine the rocket and was standing on it as it flew. Then Klein fell into his thoughts and finally imagined a spacesuit, which caused the place around Neil and Klein to collapse. Neil tried to calm the situation down, and in the end, Klein succeeded in the test. His eye color changed, and he had indeed become a seer. Neil congratulated him on his success, and told him he was a promising young man. Klein could see Neil's spirit, and Neil told him that he could now see people's spirits and know everything about them, like their health status, for example. But Klein was shocked when he saw two huge eyes above Neil. Neil told him not to worry, they might just be a representation of the ritual, but Klein saw a person fading in the background. After what happened, Klein became exhausted, so Neil advised him not to use his powers too much because it exhausts his spirit and could lead to him seeing illusions. He told him that when Leonard first started using his powers, he used them so much that he fell down the stairs, so Klein must use his powers with caution. Neil told Klein how to turn his powers on and off, telling him to tap the spot between his eyebrows twice. When Klein did this, it worked. His powers stopped, and his eyes returned to normal. Neil then gave Klein some instructions on using his powers in different ways, and said that they would stop there for the day. But before he left, he had to receive his standard issue gear, which was a pistol and special bullets for killing demons. He told him to ask Dunn for compensation. Klein was happy, then went to Dunn. Dunn was giving him advice and guidance, telling him that with power and distinction come risks, so he must manage things well and not interfere in matters that don't concern him. He then told him his salary was £3 a week and gave him a full month's salary in advance, £12. Klein was happy about this and said to himself that he had finally overcome poverty. After that, we see that Klein bought a cane and new clothes and started wandering around the city. While walking, suddenly a carriage stopped beside him and the person inside ordered him to enter. It turned out that the person in the carriage was Leonard. He gave Klein a picture of a boy named Elliot, son of a famous merchant, who had been kidnapped that morning. They needed to investigate the matter, which made Klein question why they were responsible since they only handled beyonders. Leonard told him They were now undercover as a security company, and the child's father was a regular client. Leonard assured Klein that it would be easy for a diviner, then gave him the child's clothes to track. Klein began using his power, and Leonard was impressed that Klein had bought a divination cane. When Klein's power activated, the moon turned red and his power spread through the divination cane. Klein could see everything the child had done, but strangely, the eyes Klein had seen before were visible, following all the paths the child had taken. He began guiding the carriage to the child's location, turning right and left until they reached a strange house on Forreston Street. When they entered the house, it appeared abandoned. They climbed the stairs, and the cane pointed to the exact location of the child. Klein used his eye power and saw 2 kidnappers with the child. Leonard praised him, saying, "Well done. This will be over now." But Klein felt tired again and wondered if he was overusing his power. Leonard went to the room and broke in forcefully. The kidnappers tried to kill Leonard, but he dodged the bullet and took down the first kidnapper in the blink of an eye, then beat the second kidnapper until he was also eliminated. During this, a strange feather appeared, and Klein and Leonard felt a dark power. Klein stepped back, and indeed, the 2 kidnappers transformed into a strange monster. Leonard was excited, and the battle began. Leonard wasn't attacking, and the monster couldn't touch him. When the monster decided to flee, Klein noticed and began tracking it carefully to avoid being ambushed. The monster appeared next to Klein, who fired his gun while trembling. The monster flew into the sky, then suddenly fell due to Leonard's power. Leonard appeared in his world, restraining the monster with his power, then eliminated it completely. Everyone was happy about rescuing the child, but suddenly Klein felt something strange and saw the eyes again. When Leonard asked what was wrong, he said it was nothing. After Leonard left, Klein said to himself that the real Klein had visited this place before. After that, they delivered the child to his father, and Leonard began investigating, wondering where the kidnappers got the Beyonder potion that turned them into an uncontrollable monster. Leonard joked with Klein, telling him he was lucky because it was rare for beginners to encounter such a monster. Then Leonard said, "Anyway, I'm happy to work with you," and extended his hand for a handshake, which surprised Klein, but he shook it. Leonard told Klein that something drew him to Klein, and Klein replied, "Me too." After Klein left, we see Leonard talking to someone in the shadows. Then we see Klein going home, very happy because he would tell his sister that he got a job. When he reached home and tried to open the door, he found that the place had changed, which shocked him. He felt there was an intruder nearby, and tried to escape. Then he saw a door and went through it. Inside, he found Klein's notebook with its pages flipping rapidly until it stopped on a page that read, "Everyone will die, including me." Suddenly, the Fool card appeared and completely changed the place. Klein woke up terrified and thought to himself that he felt the house across from the kidnapping site contained evidence related to the Intis family's notes. After that, we see someone wandering through the city until they reached the intended address. When they reached the house, the door opened by itself, and it turned out to be Klein's house. This person appears to be Klein's brother, named Benson, who couldn't believe they would live in such a house, which moved him to tears. They sat at the dining table, and Klein was the one preparing the food this time. Klein's sister and brother were surprised by the delicious smell of the food, so much that his sister asked if this was really the first time Klein had cooked. When Klein's sister tasted the food, she was amazed by it. Then Benson gave Klein a giftan expensive suit, which made Klein say that this gift was costly. His sister told him that Benson had been saving money for it for some time. When Klein put on the suit, they were impressed because it fit him perfectly. Klein was happy and thanked his sister and brother, then remembered his parents for a moment. His brother told him they were family and there was no need to thank them. They were all happy. We then see the person who was watching Klein being tortured by Dan, and he managed to discover the location of the Antigonus family's diaries. He recognized from the seal around his neck that he was from the Secret Order, which is responsible for leaking the Antigonus family's diaries. At that moment, Leonard said it was no wonder this person was watching Klein, and that if the organization wanted something, they wouldn't let go of it easily. So Dan decided they needed to find the diaries as quickly as possible before the Secret Order got to them. Then Dan's assistant came and told him that Klein had found a clue regarding the diary. We see that Klein went to a place with a deceased woman and couldn't handle the situation, but Captain Dan helped him. Leonard found a message that read, "I came here to reclaim the diary, but during the search of the area, they couldn't find the diary." They also learned that the son of the deceased person had gone missing. This prompted Leonard to pull out a picture of this person and gave it to Klein, who used his staff and power to find where this person was. When Klein started using his power, his staff began moving strangely and was about to hit him, but Dan intervened and grabbed it, saying there was a tremendous force at work that kept them from knowing the whereabouts of Piper, the son of the deceased. Therefore, Dan decided to seek help from the Knights Templar, as there are many ways to find the person. After that, they moved to a strange place, and Dan gave them the Topaz Pendulum, which helps amplify communication between spirits and will greatly aid Klein in his task today. We learned that the Knights Templar allowed them to use a dangerous Grade 2 tool to help locate Piper, which is now being brought to the city of Tingen. This tool is an ancient artifact that is rare and used by Transcendents. Some of these tools possess mysterious powers powers, while others have destructive capabilities, which is why they are placed behind specific barriers in various locations. By the way, Grade 2 means it's a dangerous tool. At that point, we saw the team members arriving with the tool, and Dan introduced Klein to the rest of the Nighthawks team. He then introduced the other members. First, Harrison, known as the Nightmare from the 7th sequence, then Borgia, the Gravedigger from the 8th sequence, and finally, Dolly, the Spirit Medium from the 7th sequence, who welcomed Klein. However, Harrison objected to Klein coming on this mission because it was dangerous, and Klein's offensive capability was 0. What concerned Dan at that moment was the ancient artifact, and when he found out that they would be using it for the mission, he objected since it posed a significant risk. But Harrison said they were looking for Piper, and there were rumors he was from the Antigonus family, and if these rumors were true, they could only find him using a tool made by this family. Then Harrison instructed everyone to do as he did, so he could activate the tool without putting anyone in danger. Klein felt a burning sensation from how the tool was activated and didn't understand what was happening. When Harrison uncovered the artifact, it was in a box and started moving, shocking Klein. When he opened the box, a small mummy in the form of a clown emerged. Klein commented that it was a cute doll, but the situation soon changed, and the doll revealed its other face, taking control of Klein and nearly choking him had it not been for Leonard's intervention. Klein began to flee from the doll because he was scared of it. At that point, Dan told him it seemed to be tracking him because he had found evidence about the Antigonus family's diary, since this doll reacts to everything concerning this family. We then learned that this doll could control 2 or 3 nearby individuals, but could free itself from their control with a strong slap, just as Leonard had done. Klein was still trying to escape, and the doll was following him, but suddenly, it became very angry and began to rage when it saw Piper's coat. It confirmed for Harrison that Piper was from the Antigonus family, and he ordered them to start tracking him immediately. The Nighthawks team wandered through the city performing the unique movement related to the ancient artifact, and Klein felt embarrassed, but Leonard saved him by saying he could stop now. The team boarded vehicles to search, and then we moved to a strange person using black magic to perform a spell, utilizing Piper and the diaries, with Piper being the sacrifice. Then we see a strange person with a face resembling that of a clown, saying he arrived late and that the diaries had been absorbed, but he heard the sound of the Nighthawks vehicles and thought it seemed like an opportunity to turn the tables. When the Nighthawks team arrived at the location where Piper was, Klein was skeptical about the doll's abilities, but Dan cut off his thoughts and told him to do his job. Klein began using the pendulum and said there was something very dangerous in the warehouse, and the doors opened, releasing red winds that covered the place, terrifying the horses. It seemed like Piper had transformed into a rampaging monster. The Nighthawks members prepared to take down Piper, who had lost his mind when he saw the artifact. We then see Dan instructing Klein to take care of himself and not to interfere while the rest of the members attacked Piper. They all united in their attack, surrounding Piper, and were about to defeat him, but unfortunately, an explosion changed everything, and Piper regained control over himself. At that moment, Dan realized they were not dealing with an ordinary monster but a moving corpse. The Nighthawks members continued to attack, and Dolly tried to find a weakness in this monster. Dan was astonished by the creature's strength, saying all their attacks had become limited due to Piper merging with the diary, but Dolly told him she had found a weakness and instructed everyone to control the monster for 3 seconds. The rest of the team started doing this while Dan and the others launched crazy, powerful attacks until they managed to bind the monster. But in an instant, everything flipped when Klein felt something strange. The diary started glowing red inside Piper's body, and suddenly, a devastating attack exploded, injuring Dan and Leonard severely. Harrison tried to mitigate the attack, but it turned out the target was the ancient artifact. It was then that Harrison attacked again and struck the monster with his sword, but it wasn't enough, as the monster countered the attack and sent Harrison flying. Dan tried to manage the situation with his serious injuries. At that moment, Klein finally intervened and used a tool to put the monster to sleep, which he succeeded at. Dolly then seized the opportunity and executed the final attack, successfully defeating the monster. After this, Dan was concerned for Dolly and went to check on her, starting to give her treatment. Meanwhile, Klein heard something strange, and when he arrived at the source of the sound, he found a strange diary. The person with the clown face then appeared and tried to attack Klein, but Dan attacked him, revealing he was using a shadow clone. This person started to flee. The goal of the Nighthawks members was to secure the diary and the ancient artifact, and they began trying to catch this person, while Klein remembered he was the same person he had seen at the circus before. The battle between Harrison and this clown was very intense, but Harrison couldn't hit him. Even Leonard intervened, and this clown did an explosive attack from his face. None of the Nighthawks were able to hit him. Klein was amazed by this and analyzed his movements, and came up with an idea and tried it. He succeeded in hitting the clown, who decided to unleash his power and tried to attack Klein. All the Nighthawks went to protect him, but they discovered that the attacker was a copy, and the real person was standing far away, targeting the the mystical item. He succeeded in his plan and hit it, causing the bag to open and the doll to come out again and take over the atmosphere. This time, the doll took control of everyone in the place. Klein was trying to save himself and began to think about using the fog and gold incantation from his world. He began chanting until it worked, and he began to think that the doll's power had increased because of the notebook. The clown-faced person's goal from the beginning was to release this doll so that he could control them all. He thought that if he stayed in this world for too long, his friends would be harmed. That's why he decided to use the pendulum to cast a spell and return safely to his friends. When he returned, he found the clown talking to him and wanting to make a deal with him. If Klein handed over the Antigonus family notebooks, he would release him and his friends. He said, "To believe me, I will give you a gift, which is how to advance to Sequence 8. Klein was thinking whether what he was saying was true or false, and he was hesitant and didn't understand what was happening. This clown tried to trick Klein and told him that all his friends were asleep and what happened would be a secret between them. But Leonard was aware of what was happening and wanted Klein to respond quickly because their time was running out. Then this clown told Klein a word that shocked him, but we didn't hear it. He used a strange weapon and was about to touch Klein with it, but Klein grabbed the weapon, which shocked the clown. Klein began to take advantage of the opportunity and attack. Then we see that the doll's influence hadn't ended, and the doll controlled this clown, allowing Klein to take advantage of the opportunity and kill him with 2 shots to the neck and head. In the end, it turned out that this clown was a follower of the secret order. Suddenly, the clown stood up again and said the name Hornesis, then died. After that, the battle ended, and they regained control of the mystical item. Everyone began to check on each other. Then Leonard went and told Klein that he wanted to save him, but Klein saved everyone. Then he told him in his ear that he was aware of what was happening, which made Klein call him a narcissist. After that, they returned the mystical weapon to its place, and the mission ended successfully. Dan was telling Klein that he knew that Klein was curious to know what was in the notebook, but the Holy Cathedral Knights must check the notebook first. Then they would let Klein see its contents. Dan began to praise Klein and tell him that his performance was outstanding, and that he saved everyone and thwarted the Secret Order's plan. He told him that he would tell the Holy Cathedral Knights about his excellence, and that Klein would become a permanent employee soon. Klein was amazed that the person who did all this knew that the notebook would generate a dangerous power, so why didn't he do all this away from Tingen? Dan told him that people with evil plans always make wrong decisions. Then Klein looked at the clown's body and was shocked that he had killed someone. Captain Dan comforted him and told him that killing him was necessary to save the lives of many people and that he should realize this. Here, Klein remembers what the clown told him before he died, which was that he should know that the sequence 8 corresponding to the seer is the clown. After that, the rest of the Nighthawks met to say goodbye to each other. Here, Harrison began to acknowledge Klein's strength and told him, "You are the first person from Sequence 9 to defeat someone from Sequence 7. Your performance was truly amazing." Klein justified that everything was just luck, but Leonard began to analyze the matter, which annoyed Klein, and he said that it was just luck, nothing more. In the end, Harrison said that Klein was the most skilled seer he had ever met, and that he had a bright future, which embarrassed Klein. Strange things were happening to Klein, which made Dan ask him to rest. Klein began to think about everything that had happened, and decided that it was time to go to the cathedral and visit his teacher. Then we moved to the university, where Klein was talking to the history teacher, Igers, and asking him about Hornakis. Klein began to tell him everything that had happened to him regarding the Antigonus family notebook and the Hornassus Mountains. The teacher told him that he had heard something similar to this before, which excited Klein, but the teacher disappointed him and told him that it was perhaps a similarity of word roots, nothing more. Klein asked the teacher to contact him if he got any information about these matters, and the teacher agreed. Then Klein decided to leave, at which point the teacher thanked him for his gift. Klein told him that he was the one who should thank him for his years of teaching him. The teacher told him to be careful in his work, because there were forbidden areas that Klein shouldn't interfere in, so that he wouldn't suffer bad luck. Klein told him that he would take this into consideration. After Klein left, the teacher began to think about the words, and a tattoo appeared behind his ear, but it wasn't clear. Then a strange power began to come out of the teacher's shadow, and it seems that he was from the Beyonders, and Klein didn't know this. In a dark night, there was a mysterious man torturing his servant for failing to recover and decode the Antigonus family ledger. The servant had failed his master from the Aurora group and was about to face death for this insult. The servant desperately begs for his life, explaining that whenever they took the ledger, it appeared ordinary due to protective magic, which is why he used several people as sacrifices to decode it, but they all died and the code wasn't broken, and the code fell into the hands of the Nighthawks team. Because of this, his master decides to tear out his servant's tongue and was about to end his life. The servant pleads that one of the sacrifices, Klein, is still alive, and through him he can give the Aurora group what they need. The servant was granted one last chance and left alive to return to work. He knows that failure means being cut to pieces before he can say a word. Meanwhile, Klein heads to the Nighthawk headquarters where old Neil teaches him ritual magic to enhance his abilities as a seer. Neil warns that a low-level person like Klein will need external help to perform rituals safely and should never ask for help from darkness so as not to drift toward the abyss. Klein watches Neil prepare the rituals while wondering if his own luck-changing rituals were black magic. Neil creates magical boundaries, lights candles with spiritual energy, and begins chanting. Klein expects something epic, but his mouth drops open when the old man asks for help paying his debt of 30 pounds. After Klein confronts him about this mundane request, Neil laughs and takes him outside to demonstrate the power of magic. They find a wallet on the ground belonging to a wealthy person. Klein doubts Neil's intentions, but Neil assures him that ritual magic was always pure, and there's nothing suspicious like stealing from a noble person. A carriage arrives with the wallet's owner, making Klein wonder how Neil will handle the situation now, but Neil returns the wallet to its owner and receives a reward of 30 pounds, shocking Klein again. Neil begins lecturing Klein about trust in magic and explains that anything can be done with magic as long as it doesn't harm anyone. After that, Klein was thinking about Emperor Russell's diary on how to become a good Beyonder by digesting the potion and acting like the chosen Beyonder class, but his thoughts are interrupted when a girl named Angelica approaches with a flyer for the city's divination club. Klein seizes the opportunity, believing it will help him act like a seer. Inside, the fortune teller Glaucus predicts Klein's future, saying he won't return to his destination anytime soon, but it's possible in the long term. This gives Klein hope. When Glaucus begins coughing severely, Klein taps his forehead to see his aura and advises him to visit a doctor to check his lungs and eyes. Glaucus asks if Klein is a doctor, but Klein reveals he's a seer. During registration, Angelica remembers that their best fortune teller, Vincent, predicted the appearance of a distinguished seer, which aroused Klein's curiosity. She told him he was late because Vincent was about to finish his lecture on divination. Then the girl leads him to Vincent's class where Klein observes from the entrance, noting that Vincent uses white magic and doesn't seem suspicious. As the class ends, Klein notices Vincent giving a gift to one of the girls. When the girl runs past Klein, he feels a terrible feeling. Ignoring his intuition and thinking he has poor perception, Klein introduces himself to Vincent, and the two sit down to chat. Vincent reads Klein's fortune and is shocked by his superior abilities, offering some useful advice on how he can use family and social gatherings to achieve what he hoped for, which shocked Klein and made him sink into thought. Then he stood up and thanked Vincent for the information he provided, but Klein was shocked by the session price, and happy that Vincent made the session free this time. After taking his leave and returning home, Klein began working on decoding the mysterious advice Vincent gave him, and how he could use it to return to his world. He maps out all possibilities of using the Grey Fog world and its subjects to return home, and also discusses how he can start acting as a seer to make his dreams come true in reality. Finally, he decided to direct the rituals to himself, and happily drew up his plan to see if it would succeed or not. Suddenly, he heard a noise at his door and burned the paper he was drafting and went to see who it was, only to find a turtle doll made by his sister Melissa, telling Klein that he had been working hard and that it's good to relax from time to time, and that this doll was made for him to help with that. However, Klein unintentionally offends Melissa when he tells her she made a beautiful turtle, only for her to reveal that the doll was supposed to resemble a human, not a turtle. At that point, Klein finds it's time for him to head to work, and Melissa tells him to relax when he can, and invites him to her friend's birthday banquet the following Sunday. Klein remembers the two words, family and gathering, that Vincent mentioned and takes the opportunity to attend the banquet at the end of that week with his sister. Later, he summons his private world again, and calls upon the Hanged Man and Justice Lance, using his power as a seer to see their true nature. Klein congratulates Audrey on her success in becoming a spectator. Then he notices that he can see the symbols of all three of them, which represent their Beyonder class, along with their special halos. However, their special symbols were confusing, with dual symbolic meanings and incomplete. He then allows the two to speak freely, and Miss Justice mentions that she has 3 questions she wants to ask them. The first was about the role of the spectator, and the Hanged Man decided to answer about how spectators remain spectators forever, and were never in the spotlight, always in the background, watching and quiet, and that she should never lose control of herself, and focus on the meaning of the potion. He then proceeds to explain the key to embodying the potion. Klein corrects him and mentions how representative representation and digestion were the key, which shocks the hanged man when he absorbs these words and thanks Klein for his clarification. Then the girl asks what would happen if an animal drank the potion because she accidentally allowed her dog to drink some of it. The hanged man says that if the dog didn't die immediately or turn into a monster, it likely became a beyonder animal. Finally, she cries about her father's problems and the problems of noble families and how the Leon government is failing, so Klein advises her to conduct an open examination for both nobles and commoners to obtain skilled people to help strengthen and stabilize the state, which surprises them, and they begin to thank him. Afterward, he tells them that his free advice was a down payment for what he wants, and when asked about their mission, Klein tells them he wants them to collect Roselle's secret diaries for him, which shocked the hanged man about how Klein knows all these matters in the first place. Klein also asked them to cast a luck-improving spell on Sunday directed at him, and they agreed. Then Miss Justice asked to know the spell, and when Klein told them, the hanged man was shocked because no one should know this spell, and after hearing it, this led to their complete submission to Klein, and he decided to treat him with greater reverence. Then Klein ended the meeting and returned home, thinking that Sunday was his day off so he could deal with any unexpected things that might appear. From his window, he sees Benson and Melissa, and wonders if he could act like a diviner to slowly reveal to his siblings the truth that he had become a beyonder. After preparing and spending days in happiness and peace, Sunday finally arrived, and the Moretti family wore their elegant clothes and headed to Melissa's friend's party. When they arrived there, Klein learned that the friend's sister's name was Selena, the girl he had seen in Vincent's class earlier, but she didn't recognize him to the extent that she was telling him he was handsome, and her sister Elizabeth also worked at Vincent's headquarters. Suddenly, he heard Alger's voice in his head performing the rituals he was assigned, but he ignored it and entered the party. The atmosphere was vibrant, and Klein was adapting to the situation. When he went to get some food, Elizabeth appeared and told him not to worry, because Selena didn't know his identity as a seer yet. After that, his sister appeared, which made him nervous, and she told him she wished he and his brother would find wives, but Elizabeth was still only 16 years old, which shocked him by her thinking. Then the girls gathered in a room, and Selena was holding the magical mirror that Vincent had given her. Selena told her friends that Vincent designed it specifically so she could perform mirror magic. The girls watched as she recited a spell and activated the magical mirror. At that very moment, Klein felt a dangerous aura emanating from the upper room. Then we see on the other side Vincent with an evil aura coming from him as he says, "The time has come, Klein Moretti, the time for sacrifice has come." Klein began to run. When he used his pendulum, he sensed a terrible danger lurking nearby. When he arrived there, he saw the three girls using the magical mirror to see when they would marry some handsome young men, and suddenly a savage girl appeared in the mirror, which shocked Klein and made him realize that the matter was dangerous, and he wouldn't be able to contact the team in time. Klein noticed that it would be difficult to safely keep the girls away from the mirror. It was already too late for Selena, and something seemed to have affected her. Then Klein remembered that he could perform rituals as Neil had taught him, and he began searching for the necessary supplies to perform the ritual. He noticed that they were all in the room where the girls were, and he had to be quick before the bodies started falling. Unfortunately, because of the spell and the mirror, Selena hypnotized her friends and transformed into a monster, wanting to chase Klein, who tried to rush and perform the rituals. He gathered the tools and began chanting, and was about to succeed in saving the situation, but Vincent used his power and gave Selena some strength. Selena stopped Klein before he could finish, and began using her power. Klein tried to kill her with the gun, but failed, and Selena bound him with her hair and began draining his spiritual power. Vincent started speaking through Selena's body, angrily asking Klein about everything he knew and discovered regarding the Antigone's family's note. All Klein could think about was his sister, and he regretted that he would be the reason Melissa would never grow up. Just when he was about to lose hope, he heard the voice of Miss Justice performing her rituals, giving Klein a new surge of power that he desperately needed. He broke free from Selena's power, which angered Vincent, who decided to use his last card and tore off his arm as a magical sacrifice in a desperate attempt to eliminate Klein. But it was too late. Klein used his remaining power to complete his spell to save Selena and purify her from the evil power. In the end, he succeeded in destroying the evil power with his bullet, cutting the connection between Selena and Vincent. Selena returned to normal, and Klein vowed to himself never to involve his family in mysterious and unknown matters again. After that, we see that Vincent tried to escape before his master could end his life, but his master appeared right at his door and crushed him like a fly. Later, Klein took Dan to the divination club and told him that Vincent was the one who gave Selena the mirror, so he might be part of the Aurora group. When they arrived there, they found Vincent's body with his arm torn off, and Klein confirmed that the spells matched those on Selena's mirror. Dan then used his magical abilities to catch a glimpse of the evil entity of the group, and Dan stood face to face, shocked, before before a completely chained being with one eye. At the same time, Lady Justice wakes up in Lyon on her birthday, and the servants had brought her clothes to prepare her. After getting ready, she was very happy and celebrating with her dog Susie, who was her biggest shock when she found out that he could now speak like humans because of drinking the potion.